Lot is leaving Sdom. I mentioned last year some very, I think, thought-provoking, maybe challenging ideas. I heard from a few people about it. Let me just reiterate one point about it, which is the authorship of some of the comments that I made last week and some of what we talked about. And it's just to say that the Bechor Shor, Rabbi Yosef Bechor Shor, is actually one of the Balei Tosfot, and it was a Talmud of Rabbeinu Tam. So one of the main among the Balei Tosfot. And that should give you an idea about the extent of, what should I say, the pedigree of some of those comments. And Ein Kamakum Laharich, I don't want to go back down that road again. That was last week's. Now I'm up to the new piece this week. And in order to see it a little bit inside, as Lot is running away, and he's going to find himself, of course, in a cave in a rather degraded situation involving his daughters, there's actually a short portion in between the two. And we actually should spend a little while trying to understand this portion. It often gets skipped over. As Lot and his family are leaving from Sdom, it describes that they don't quite run away from the place completely. It seems that they stop off in one of those 5 towns. They stop off in a place called Tzoar, also referred to by a cognate of that word, which is mitzar. And it describes a discussion between Lot and his accompaniment, his the malachim who are with him, who speak with him about the prospect of not going all the way out of town, but maybe finding one of those 5 cities to go to. If you look at Pasuk Yudchet, Perak Yutet, Pasuk Yudchet, Vayomer Lot, Alehem Alna Adonai. Lot says to them, my masters, please don't do this to me. Hine na matzach avdecha chen be'einecha, vatagdel chasdecha asher asita imadi la'achayot et nafshi, va'anochi la'uchal lihimalei tahara, pentid bakani hara avamati. So I, behold, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and of course you've done great kindness with me to save me, save my family, but I cannot run all the way to the mountains, lest I be caught up in the evil, in the ra'ah, vamati, and I will die. And the question is, what is this concern that he has? So hold on one second, Shelly. Let me just, by way of introduction, I already spoke last time about, I mentioned it, it's what Rashi describes, which is, it's a relative worthiness on the part of Lot. When he lived with the people of Sdom, they're so wretched, they're so terrible, they're so horrible, they're such menuvalim. At Vayiti Nira at Sadik Uchadayli Natzel. I looked so good that, relatively speaking, I was righteous, and therefore I could be saved. But if I go up to the mountain range, which is where my uncle Avraham lives, I'll be terrible. I'll be caught up with them, and I will be killed, basically, in the as a result of not being worthy. Rashi quotes the example of what the woman says to Eliyahu, that when she, recall, has a child, the child dies, and she says to Eliyahu, Bata Elai lahaskirat avoni, when you came to me to be in my presence, you brought up the specter of my sin, i.e., and now I'm being punished. So I was, relative to the people around me, not so bad. Now that you came, I look terrible. There's obviously a parallel here to Noach, another Noach-Lot parallel we spoke about. And that's one way of looking at it. Shelley, be waiting patiently. Go ahead, please unmute yourself.
Why does my Art Scroll translation say in verse 18, my Lord, singular? The Hebrew seems to be that the malachim are plural, but more than once. In verse 21, they have a capital He, which would mean God.
Yeah.
Why are they translating it this way?
The Art Scroll translates it that way because the Targum Onkelos translates it that way. The Targum Onkelos, which you can find in many Chumashim as the first among commentaries on the Chumash, is actually reflecting the idea that here, how could Lot be appealing to angels for salvation instead of to God? Therefore, when it says, please and it uses the lashon of adnut of my master, it must refer to Hashem. It can't refer to the angels. Because it would be strange.
He's on that lower level. He could certainly be referring to the angels as opposed to God. I mean, he's been living in Sodom. He could be thinking that the angels have their own power, almost like the sun and the moon. He's part Abraham, but he's part Sodom.
Right. That's, how did I translate it initially? The Radak here points out that any time that, according to Chazi, quotes from Chazal, from the Gemara and Shavuot, that whenever it's Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, when it has to do with Avram Avinu, it's Kodesh. With regard to Lot, it's generally Chol, but not in this instance. The Gemara says this is the one instance when Lot used the expression Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, he meant Hashem. Okay? Why is that? Because the one who has the power of life and death, must only be God. Even Lot must have known that, and therefore that must be the case here. So, in other words, Radak, quoting from Chazal, says here for sure it meant he was talking about Hashem. He was davening. This is the tefillah of Lot. But the Radak writes, "V'divreihem tama." But the words of the Chachamim here, the Gemara, saying that really this is a reflection on Lot davening to Hashem, that he meant not my masters, you two angels, but rather he was talking directly to God, is strange here. Shahare Amar Vayomer Lot Aleihem Lashon Rabim Mashma. Look at the beginning of the pasuk, the same verse, verse 18. And God said to them, please don't, Hashem. Why would Lot talk to them, plural, and say to them, please, God? Talk to them. That's what lends itself, says the Radak, on the level of Pshat, exactly as you're saying, Shelley, unlike the translations that you have, unlike the translation of Onkelos, unlike the translation of the Gemara in Masechet Shvuot, sounds like he's talking to them in the plural. V'hamalach gam ken yesh biyadu lahamit lahachayot b'shlichut hakel v'afilu nevi'im kemo Eliyahu ve'Elisha. Writes the Radak, the Malach also has the power to put to death and to bring back to life when they are sent by God. Even prophets had this capability. Two examples, Eliyahu Hanavi and his student, the Navi Elisha. Remember, they both have a story, Eliyahu and Elisha, a teacher and student, or teacher and disciple, right? They both have an episode where they bring someone back to life. And they were obviously, they're human beings, but they're Nevi'im. And Nevi'im sometimes can be given, apparently, these keys to the castle. And what is another way of referring to a Navi Hashem? As a Malach Hashem, an angel of God, not in the sense of an angelic being that is not corporeal, human, etc., but rather a human being that is an emissary of Hashem. And that's why I brought up this little note at the beginning about Rabbi Yosef Bechor Shor from last year. You can plug it in over here as you would like to. And what Radak seems to be coming down on in the end is when he said to the two angels, please don't, my masters, what he really meant was, please no, don't do that. Please, my masters, you who have come in the honorific of my masters, because you are who you are malachim. But really, he wasn't speaking to them and asking them. He didn't really think, according to Chazal, that they had the power to do this, to change his decree, but rather he was talking really to Hashem. But he recognized that these two are emissaries of Hashem. Therefore, Vayomer Lot Aleihem Al Na Adonai. Now, by the way, just as an aside, I don't bandy about. I know some people, when they're just talking to give a shir, they say Shem Hashem just like that. I think that's not correct. But if I read a full pasuk from start to finish, you understand, anytime you read a full pasuk, there you could say the Shem Hashem because you're reading the pasuk. Again, Chazal in the end sort of paskin that it's Shem Kodesh, right? That's what the Gemara says. But normally when Lot speaks and he uses the Lashon, Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, he actually refers to Shem Chol. Yeah? Okay, Karen, please go ahead.
I'm just wondering if Lot realized that they were emissaries, would that put a new light on when he pulled them in the house and put his daughters out, or offered to put his daughters out, especially since he's Abraham's relative and knows about the Akedah? With there's
So in other words, does he think that's the test?
Pardon me?
Does he
That
think
he might think it's a test, or he might think this is what he's supposed to do, and he will be, it'll all work out all right if he acts like his brother.
Interesting. Interesting. Although don't forget, the Akedah hasn't happened yet because Yitzchak's not born. And okay. And the whole point with the Akedah is it's a mind-boggling mitzvah from Hashem. Here, Lot is figuring out on his own, hey, I have a good idea. Replace these two with my own two daughters. There's something that's askew with this guy.
There is askew, but if he realized that they were emissaries,
did he then want to protect them and not allow?
I don't know. It's just a thought.
Then he could have offered himself, not his own daughters, right?
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
He unfortunately seemed to treat them like chattel.
Okay.
I have no other word for it.
This has now been recorded.
Yeah, we're going to come back to the thought. It's okay. We're going to come back to this idea of Lot and his daughters in the cave. We're getting there, but there is this piece in the middle. I realized last week I kind of was going to skip over it, but this is actually important. He does get a reprieve, and there is something about what Lot says where he says, there must be some way, I can't run up to the mountain. Rashi's idea is I can't run up to the mountain because I'm going to get ensnared by the fact that I don't measure up when you compare me to my uncle. But there could have been other reasons as well. Pentid Makani Hara'a, according to some of the commentators, is wild animals. We generally don't think about this now, but there was a time not so long ago in the history of humanity where people had to be worried that if they were just off in some area and they didn't know what to do, they were off in the wilderness somewhere, wild beasts could come and eat them. And here also, though, there's a little bit of Lot sort of, am I really on such a level spiritually that God would protect me from such a thing? Or am I going to go off to the mountains and I'm going to get eaten? By the by, if you've ever been to the area of Sodom and Amorah today, if you've ever been in situ, live on location, you can go there today. All right, it's a scar on the still Adayom Hazeh, with the sulfur and the smell and the heat, the intense heat. If you've ever had occasion to hike up the side of the mountain there, Matsada, up to Matsada, then you know that it is a scorching heat. That by 7:30 in the morning, pretty much 7 o'clock, 7:30. I was there last in 2017 in the blazing summer, 114 degrees Fahrenheit daily, and walked up together with Lori and our boys. The girls too young then, they didn't come, but we tried to go up, and you got to go at 4 in the morning. And at 7 o'clock, 7:30 or so, they closed the path up to Matsada. It's too hot, too dangerous. So we have plumbing installed today. There's plumbing on top of Matsada and electricity. And of course, you can get up there and get a drink, etc. Not in antiquity. And he's telling him, and he's being told, go up to the mountains. Where? So it doesn't have to be something so theological. It could just be, I can't live in a place that does not have any civilization. I didn't get time to pack. I was thrown out by Mama. He was vacillating about whether to go, not to go. The scorching desert in general is a risky place. And there isn't really a provision for where he's supposed to go when he gets there. It's just go. And perhaps he wasn't intending, for various reasons, according to one of the Mefarshim, he doesn't want to go back to his uncle, not because he's worried about how it'll look spiritually, but because he's the nephew who said, you know what, uncle, I'm out of here. I'm going to make it on my own. And he didn't make it on his own. He failed. And now he's going to come back. He's embarrassed to go home to Uncle Avraham. One of the commentators actually said this. He refuses to go back lest he have to confront his abject failure. This is the Ran says this. The Ran will say this. The Abarbanel says this. Two Mefarshei HaMikra among the Rishonim who declare he doesn't want to go back because he can't face his uncle, not for any spiritual reason. He just doesn't want to go back there. So what other options does he have? So he wants to know, maybe hine na ha'ir hazot krova lanu shama v'hi mitzar imalta na shama halo mitzar hi utechi nafshi. Can I go to this town that's nearby? What's it called? Mitzar, aka Tzoar. It's a cognate of the same word. Let me escape there, and I'll just go there. The word mitzar itself, generally translated as Rashi writes, Onkelos writes, it's a small town. Now, what does it mean, a small town? Rashi says it's not the question of its size, the question of its age. What's the question of its age? Rashi goes through a whole chronology here, which basically states that all of these cities only started to exist 5 decades ago, that all of civilization was gathered at the Tower of Bavel, Migdal Bavel, and that was the Great Dispersion, the Dor HaPalaga, and therefore Sdom was only made 52 years ago. The simple math, there's a more complex mathematical calculation here, but we know in chapter 18, Avram Avinu has just had his Brit Milah. He's 99 when he has the Brit Milah. We know that he's 100 when he gets the news, when his son Yitzchak is born. So he's between 99 and 100, somewhere hovering between those two in this story, which is in between the news that Yitzchak will be born, which is right after the Brit Milah, and the birth of Yitzchak. So in that year, this story happens. In fact, it's right after he gets the news when he's 99. But is he 99 in one day? Is he 99 and a half? We don't exactly know. We think that the story happened around Pesach time. So he is maybe around 99 and a half, according to the Gemara, that seems to indicate that the patriarchs were born somehow in the Chodesh, in the month of Tishrei, which is itself a bit of a question, but about Avram, at least, that's what we say. And about Yaakov, not so clear about Yitzchak, because we say that he was born on Pesach. So how could it say the patriarchs are born in another month? So you generally say there's some connection between these two spiritually, not for now. But if you do the math and you figure out using this more complex calculation that Avram Avinu was 48, Rashi goes through all the numbers. I don't want to bore you with the statistics of it. Avram Avinu was 48 in the year of the Great Dispersion. Now he's 100. 52 years have elapsed. The stone was made immediately, and like any other urban area, you have the city, and then you have the satellites. One of the satellite cities or towns is called Tzoar, aka Mitzar. It's not that it's smaller in its population or in its geography, it's that it's younger. Therefore, its level of sin is not as egregious. They're running a little bit behind the curve of the way in which of the running down the hill that Sdom, Amora, and the other two towns are engaged in. So it's not as bad. And if it's not as bad, then Lot is basically saying, can I go there? Whether he knew that it was also slated for destruction or not is questionable. In other words, he knows Sdom is going to be destroyed. But if you look, it doesn't necessarily say what the scope of this place is. Verse 13, chapter 19, verse 13, Pasuk Yud Gimel, they say they're going to destroy this place. What's this place? All of it? A little portion of it? Not clear. So look at this little town here, Mitzar. And so he wants to go to this town, and he wants to stay there. Now, Vayomer Elav, in the singular, one of the Malachim answers him. Now, is the Malach speaking as the Malach, or is the Malach speaking the word of Hashem? Unanswerable. Doesn't say who's doing the Vayomering. Vayomer Elav, right? So within Chazal, some explain that actually the Sifri says that this means that Hashem answered Lot. How could Hashem answer Lot if Lot is making a request of angels? The answer must be he wasn't actually making a request of angels, he made a request of Hashem. It doesn't tell us who, it's indeterminate. Some say that these are not the words of Hashem, but specifically the Al-Shich and others, it's the word of Hashem through the Malachim. The problematic piece here again is, what does it mean that Lot made an appeal not directly to God, but an appeal to the angels? We don't believe you're allowed to daven to angels. That's theologically extremely problematic, extremely problematic. So it's questionable. But it does say here, again, and that's why Chazal, they sort of press on the point, the Gemara in Shavuot, he spoke to them, but really he davened to Hashem. We've seen this split screen before in other instances, by the way, of a person who's talking with someone on what seems like the lateral plane, but really in their mind, they're davening to Hashem. This is what happens with Daniel. This is what happens with Esther Hamalka, with Hamelach, the appeals to Hamelach. Maybe that's what's going on here as well. And so David, and so it's therefore Lot gets a reprieve, and he goes to this town. Vayomer elav hinei nasati fanecha gam ladavar hazeh levilti hofchiyat ha'ir asher dibarta. I will not overturn this place, this town, this city, which you spoke of. Maher himaleit shama ki lo uchal asod davar ad bo Hashem al ken kara shem ha'ir Tzoar. He's going to this place. Go escape to this place. I cannot do anything. Now again, here, this pasuk, Rashi says, this is the punishment given to these angels that they had said, for we will destroy this place. So now they are prevented. All right. They made it about themselves. So therefore they didn't move from there till they had to announce, we cannot do what we set out to do, or I cannot do. The destroying angel says, I cannot do what I was supposed to do until you get to Tzoar, because wherever you are, I can destroy. When you get to Tzoar, I'll destroy the other 4 cities. And there's an unanswered question about what happened in the end to this town. Tzoar was one of those 5 cities. Some of the Mefarshim say it was never destroyed. The fact that Lot went there and he made a case that it was not as bad as the other 4 towns was enough, and Hashem overturned the judgment on Tzoar, which is fantastic to consider that Avram Avinu davened for these 5 towns and it didn't work, and Lot makes a request that he be able to go to this place, and as a result of it, it survives. So that's kind of challenging to understand how that could be. But there are Mefarshei Mikra who actually make that claim, that really Lot, though he was a shadow of what his uncle was spiritually, he also accomplished something in the end, sort of a consolation prize. He didn't save Sdom and Amorah, etc. Yeah, but at least this one, he was successful to in his appeal. Could be. The Tosfot HaShalem quoted here in the Otzim Mefarshei HaTorah says this idea that the place was saved altogether. Others claim that it wasn't ongoing. By the way, the Ibn Ezra also on the Psukim here says, and the Hemek Davar, they all say that Lot saved Tzoar. He did save a little town, but others say no way. In the end, it was, the whole place was destroyed. Give me 1.5 sec. Chazal seemed to say it that way in Breisheet Rabbah, that in the end, all the people were destroyed. As long as Lot was there, it had a reprieve. But as soon as he left, same thing. The fires came to Tzoar and destroyed it as well. Because as we know, we're going to read shortly, he does run up to the mountain, to the cave. Shelley, go ahead.
It's not so hard to take the idea that that Zoar would be saved, because God is always going to say to Abraham, and I think some of the descendants, that the sins of the Canaanites are not such that they're going to be kicked out of the land and you can have it. So
until it gets there.
And right, so if the idea is that this place is a little bit newer and hasn't sinned quite as much, then why would God, then God could spare it, or would spare it, because the sin hasn't reached the level where it has to be destroyed.
Yeah. So the Abarbanel, the Or HaChaim, and the Abarbanel, it's sort of an amalgam of both. The Abarbanel says that in Tzoar there must have been 9 tzaddikim. Lot was number 10. And the Or HaChaim HaKadosh goes in your direction, Shelley, that actually in Tzoar they simply hadn't sinned as much. and therefore was not slated to be destroyed. But unfortunately, and this is something I think some of us can relate to these days a little more, which is very scary. Once the permission is given to the destroyer to wreak havoc, there is no longer any separation or differentiation is the word I'm looking for, between those who are truly deserving and those who are actually undeserving. They're swept up in it. Once there's something that's unleashed in the world that is a destructive force, it takes down anything in its path. That's part of the punishment, the surrounding environs, and etc. There's no havchana anymore between tov and ra. So at a time of calamity, Lot understood that there actually was something he could still do. So he turned to the angel whose job it was to do the destruction. And he said, maybe you can save one town if I go there. Will you save it? He asked Hashem, and the answer comes, yeah, we'll give it a reprieve, right? Which is really quite something. Again, it raises so many different questions, but Avram Avinu did daven for these 5 cities, and he was going down by increments of 5. Well, first 5, then 10, and it seems like Avram's prayer was not really answered in the affirmative. Yet Lot davens, right? So here again, you could say, well, that's true, but maybe Davka, it is Avram Avinu's prayer that is working here, but it required his nephew to at least take a little step. And there is something maybe a little bit redemptive going on here. Let me show you what I mean in the psukim themselves. Look at Pasuk Chav Gimel. Hashemesh Yatzal Aretz Velot Bat Tzoara. So just to mention by the by, the idea that the sun was coming out onto the earth at this moment as he is coming to Tzoar. If you look back a couple of psukim, it mentions actually that it was not yet the beginning of the day. Verse 15, Uchemo Shachar Allah, as the sky was lighting up. That's called Alot Hashachar. Now we're up to the sun is day. This is daybreak, right? So Rashi points out that the idea of doing it in the middle, starting it before sunrise, and then at sunrise completing it, was related to the fact that there were people who worshiped the sun and there were people who worshiped the moon. So God decides when is he going to start the attack, the onslaught against Sodom and Gomorrah, Davka, when both the sun and the moon are in the sky, or starting to be in the sky. The idea is that those who, if I do it during the day, Rashi quotes the Medrash, they'll say, oh, it's because the moon is more powerful. If they do it during the night, it's the converse, right? The sun worshippers at night will say, if it was during the day, we would have been saved. So it's the transition between these two, when both the sun and the moon are both moshlim, they're both ruling over the world. Interesting. I'm not ruling over the world, but I'm saying they're both moshlim, not in the sense they actually have power, but that they're up there. So Dafka, during that transitional period, it's important, I think, to see the transition from night into dawn, because it's going to be related to Avram Avinu davening in a minute. He's davening Shachris, if you will, standing over it. Kiviyachol. Hashem is telling him, now's your time to daven. We'll see. Vashem, Pasuk Chav Daled, verse 24. Vashem himtir al Sdom v'alamora gafrit va'esh me'et Hashem min hashamayim. And God caused to rain upon Sdom and on Amorah, a Gafrit va'esh, the 2 smaller towns not mentioned. These were the twin cities, if you will, out of the 5 towns were these 2. So the fire and brimstone, or the brimstone and fire rather, is falling. Rashi here also, Vahashem, Vav, before the name of God, and God means God and his Beitin, that it's he and his the heavenly court, the heavenly tribunal, meeting this out. Okay, and heaven coming down to earth, the sky is falling in the manner of the fire and brimstone falling from Shamayim. Okay. Vayafoch et ha'arim ha'el, ve'et kol ha'kikar, ve'et kol yoshvei ha'arim, ve'tzemach ha'adama. Everything is getting destroyed, it's being overturned. Verse 25, upside down, right? Everything is getting scorched. V'tabed ishto me'acharav v'tehin etziv melach, and the wife, his wife, looked behind him and turned into a pillar of salt. Rashi says it's the wife of, it's not, everyone knows it's the wife of Lot, but it is also, she looked behind him, behind Lot. I'm going to come back to these psukim. I'm skipping over them just to make the point, coming there in a minute. But the Nitziv Malish becomes a pillar of salt. I skipped it, coming back. Then the next pasuk, no break in the story. Vayashkem Avram baboker el hamakom asher amad sham et pnei Hashem. Avram got up in the morning to the same place where he had stood previously to receive the countenance of God. Where was that? The same place where he had been the day before when he was negotiating about Sdom, Amora, Admat, Svoyim, and Tzoar. So vayashkef al pnei Sidom, he looked out upon the face of Sdom and on Amora, al pnei kol eretz hakikar, vayar v'hinei Allah ki Torah aretz ki Torah kivshan. He looks down into the valley, to the lowest point on earth, topographically, and you can see a pillar of smoke coming up just like the pillar from the fiery furnace, as would come up from a fiery furnace. I discussed that already a couple of last classes in the year before. Vayi b'shachet Elohim et arei hakikar. Vayizkor Elohim et Avraham, vayishalach et Lot mitoch ha'afecha, bahafoch et ha'arim asher yashav bahen Lot. And so it was that as Hashem was destroying the cities of the plain, of that area, God remembered Avraham, not Lot, but Avraham. And he sent Lot out from within the inferno, within the conflagration, as he overturned the cities where Lot had dwelt. Vayal Lot mitzoar vayeshiv bahar. Now Lot went up from Tzoar, and he went to dwell in the mountainous region. Ushtei v'notav imo, both of his daughters were with him. Ki yarei lashevet b'tzoar. He was afraid to continue living in Tzoar. Vayeshiv ba'me'ara. Hu ushtei v'notav. Ellipsis, ... I'm not going into the story. We won't have time in the end today. I'm sorry. I defer the story of Lot and his daughters in the cave. So I want to drill down to understand what is going on here. As Avram wakes up in the morning, as Avram looks out from the mountainous region, Har Chevron, and he's looking down into the valley, and he can see, not the valley, but it's not a valley, really. It's, I guess, the Jordan Valley, but where the Jordan Valley becomes this great trough that is the area of Sdom. And he can see into it that the destruction is happening, and he can see the pillar that is coming up with smoke. And then the Torah gives us a pasuk of narration. And so it was, as Hashem was destroying the cities of this plain, he remembered Avram, and he sent Lot out from within this conflagration as he was overturning these cities. But then we learn that Lot took the initiative to leave from Tzoar. He was afraid to stay in Tzoar. Is that because Tzoar was going to be destroyed even though he went there? Or is that because Tzoar was not going to be destroyed, but he could see what was going on one city over, and he said, oh my goodness, and he ran away, which would beg the question, shall I give you 1 second? Which would beg the question, if he just got the reassurance from the Malachim in the name of Hashem, or if Hashem spoke directly to him, whichever one, telling him, I won't destroy Tzoar, why did he leave Tzoar? He was afraid. He didn't have much faith. He didn't think he could survive. Maybe he didn't think he was really worthy. Whatever the reasons are, he does seem to be the one to take the initiative to leave. Even though God sent him out from the conflagration, it doesn't say the conflagration was necessarily in Tzoar. And Lot takes this initiative on his own, I think, to go up to the cave when he potentially could have stayed in the place of Tzoar. Now, he was afraid to stay in Tzoar, possibly because of someone else who he knew very well, who he was very connected to, who actually, just for looking, was turned into a pillar of salt. That was after he made the request, after he was told he could go to Tzoar. So he's going with all the peckles, everybody had already been told, don't look back. She looks back, and behold, in the city of Tzoar, not in Sdom and Amora, but in the area of Tzoar, where there isn't yet a conflagration, someone looked and died. So does that mean he's really being saved? Well, maybe him, but his wife not. She left Sdom with him, but she got killed in Tzoar, or in the area of Tzoar, because it doesn't say they went to Tzoar now. They had already gone to Tzoar. It says so before. Verse 20, he says he wants to go. Verse 21, they tell him, okay, go. He went. Sounds like he went. He's leaving there, so he must have gotten there. That's where she died.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Shelly was first. Shoshi, give me a minute. Shelly first, then Shoshi, please.
Okay, when God, it says God remembers Abraham, and that's the only reason he saves Lot. Do any of the commentators say that the whole thing with the Malachim being in Sodom and how Lot handled it when the townspeople tried to force them out to violate them, and then he offers his daughters, is that a test for Lot, that Lot abjectly fails and therefore is not on his own worthy of being saved? Because he might be worthy of being saved even if he's not on Abraham's level, but he's so abjectly failed this test that he is not on his own worthy of being saved anymore, and it's strictly for Abraham, but that God did a test to know that, and that's why it's that verse is the way it is.
We'll soon see. This will be related to the question of what's going on in the cave. I think it is related to the question in the cave. Yeah. Shoshi, please go ahead.
So this follows Pasuk Yud Zayin, because Lot sees, he's told, don't look back.
Yep.
Don't look back and don't stop. Just go completely to the Kikar, go up the mountain.
Go up to the mountains, yeah.
Well, wait a second. She just got made into salt. I'm
Right
not
now.
taking a chance.
Right.
Staying in the Kikar, I'm going up the mountain.
Right. Exactly. But on the way up to the mountain, exactly. Look at verse 18. He says to that, right, exactly. They tell him, go run up there. Don't look behind you, go run up there. And Lord interrupts their plan. He says, please, right? If I found favor in your eyes, you've done good for me. So please, I don't want to go to the mountain. I could die there. The Ra'ah is up there, whatever the Ra'ah means. We saw a few ideas, right? Comparisons to Avram Avinu is one possibility. Embarrassment, and he doesn't want to go, another possibility. Wild animals, another possibility, right? So he doesn't want to go up there. So look, there's a little town here. Can I stop off in this city of Tzoar? And they tell him, okay. And then they start going, and she dies.
Right, but I think the reality of seeing his wife turn into salt,
yeah,
that scares the bejingles out of him.
Oh, for sure. He says, I'm not taking a chance now. But
right.
My point was that the Malachim, that Hashem, whether directly or through the Malachim, said to him, okay, you can go to Tzoar, you'll be okay if you go there. But then he saw his wife died. I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened to the Emunah? Someone he loved was killed by a fire. Someone Lot loved was killed by a fire. And Lot says, I'm out of here. I'm going to escape. Look how many times it said himalate. Again, himalate. Lot, himalate means escape. What was the last time? And I used this expression last shir, right? Or maybe it was 2 shiurim ago. I like, I come back to this image all the time and think about a Parshat Va'era, the story of Sodom. Avram standing in a high place, and he can see a pillar of smoke, and it looks to him like a fiery kiln. And that reminds us of the very well-known story of Avram, the fiery kiln from the Medrash. But who did get burned in the fire? Lot's father. Mm-hmm. Now his wife got burned in the fire. Now she got turned into a pillar of salt. Means that was all that was left, is a pillar of salt that's left, right? By the way, some of the Mefarshim is interesting. Say, where's the pillar of salt today? One of them, Middle Ages, I forgot already who, writes, there was an earthquake. It caused a huge wave from the Yam HaMelech, and it swept it away, and it's still around, but it's in the Yam HaMelech now, right? If you'd like, you can pay an admission fee, apparently somewhere in the environs of Sodom. I wouldn't pay such money, but you could pay it, and they'll show you a pillar and say, oh, that's Eshet Lot. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. If you go there, you start realizing, gee, there is a lot of like sulfur and salt over here. How do they know this is it? Maybe they had a Masorah. I don't know. But one way or the other, you do see that again, Lot, he's, I'm out of here. I'm going to get far away from this place, all because his wife, and that's why I think that's why it interrupts the story. Say, oh, and by the way, as they're going out, she turned to the pillar of salt. Now he changed his mind. But it says though that he left from that place. Pasuk, where am I? Pasuk Lamed, right? As Avram looks down upon it, as Hashem is destroying it, as they get there, now Lot says, I'm leaving. And it's
Where's his grief?
possible.
Where's his
What?
grief? Where
didn't hear-
is his grief?
I think there's no time.
Well, this
But
is a
I
guy
think his grief is
who-
coming. Wait, his grief is coming. His grief is coming.
Okay,
It's going to be in the cave.
okay.
That's what the wine is in the cave. A world destroyed. Another parallel with Noach. Noach, who emerges from the Teva, right? He's an Ish Adama. He plants a vineyard. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're at 9:59. I don't want to go over because I think if people have other class, I have like a phone call in 5 minutes I got to get to. But this is it, right? This is the idea. Is he's escaped from this place in order to go up to the mountain. He really didn't want to go there initially, and this little, I don't know, little, but young town called Tzoar, this little town called Mitzar. Some of them are farshing, by the way, right. And this is, throw this in for political commentary. I don't know if you want to accept it or reject it, but they say Mitzar means it was a little town. And in little towns, it's, I think the term today would be it's Hamish. The people, they know each other, they get along more, in a nicer way. They're more to a connection. And I don't remember exactly who says this. It's there are fewer luxuries, and therefore people are less into materialism, and therefore they're more content with simplicity, and therefore there's less likely a desire to steal from one another. I'm trying to find where it is. This is so many pirushim that they have fewer sinners as a result of this. It's something to do with the Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch, writing in the 19th century. Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch writes that there is less of a life of ease and comfort and of luxury, and therefore it is called mitzar. It has less going for it, and therefore, even though Sdom was already sin city, so here it was not as bad. And therefore, V'atechi nafshi, it means V'atechi nafshi. Lot says to the angels or to Hashem, whichever one, my spirit will be enlivened, means I won't be crushed by the culture that is in this place. Shelley, go ahead.
This is probably for next week, but I never thought of this before. Where on earth are they going to get wine to ply Lot with? We know where they got where the wine came from in the Noach story. He plants a vineyard. They're running away from Sodom and then Zoar, and they've got wine. I mean, okay, I have a big problem with it next week.
Maybe they took it with them.
You wouldn't take that with you.
Well, you wouldn't and I wouldn't, but they're living in antiquity when the basic drinks and beverages are water, wine, ale. There's no juice, there's no milk unless you have a cow with you. It's not going to last, right? The juice is going to spoil. That's what you got. So it's true. Where did the wine come from? Min hastam. That's one of the basic necessities in the world of Sdom. Better take alcohol with you. But then
everybody's going to be drunk all the time. They aren't going to be able to everybody's going to be drunk all the time from drinking wine or ale or some kind of fermented beverage. So then how on earth are they going to get Lot drunk when he's accustomed to drinking?
Well, obviously it was a tremendous amount of wine. We'll have to come to it to talk about it next week. I guess you'll have to come back next week. Now you're stuck.
Very often they kept wine, they stored wine in the caves because it was cooler.
Very good. Okay, maybe it was a place where they'd stored wine. Who knows?
Wine also was used to purify water because water was, they didn't have other purification methods. So they frequently mixed wine with water anyway to kill whatever was in it.
Interesting. Okay. Different ideas. We'll come back next week to figure out more of this. That's all we have time for today. But let's just say, we've taken another small step along the journey. Next week, we will be we'll be journeying up to the mountain to the cave, this horrific story with Lot and the daughters. For that, you have to come back next week.